Okay, colleagues, welcome to the Global Coalition to Address Synthetic Drug Threats, Sub-Working Group 1.1. This is the April session. My name is Brian Morales, and it's a pleasure to be here with all of you for another monthly session of the Coalition's work. Today's announcements, before we get started, are going to focus on our meeting schedule, just to update everybody since it's been a while since our last meeting. We are going to take a look at the website updates. We are going to also discuss initiatives and measures that we can now look at toward adopting. And we will also be looking at finalizing the recommendations before we begin with our presentation. So we have a busy schedule for today. I want to start off by thanking all of you for your valuable partnership and for your participation in the coalition meetings. What we're seeing around the world is the continuation of synthetic drug challenges. The situation seems to be worsening even during these past months of the coalition. We have seen the continued emergence of new synthetic drugs and the rapid spread of them. And we have even seen countries declare national emergencies. We just a couple weeks ago saw the country of Sierra Leone declare a national emergency over a synthetic drug that is ravaging that country. So very much this is very timely and urgent that we all work on this issue and redouble efforts on this space. We had very fruitful discussions on synthetic drugs at the Commission on Narcotic Drugs in the month of March. We heard many national statements on the topic. We had two global coalition meetings, one a general catch-up and the other that was focused on donor coordination. And we also saw many side events on synthetic drugs from member states and also from civil society. Out of all of the different sessions and things, one that stuck with me was this chart that I want to share with you, which was presented by GI Talk, which is the Global Initiative on Transnational Organized Crime. And it showed the expansion of synthetic drug markets from the period of 2021 to 2023. And what you can see very concerningly is that in the red countries, the market seems to be increasing in severity and unchanged in the orange. It's only in just a small handful of countries where there was a decrease in the severity of synthetic drugs. And this is just one indicative map that shows that our issue is getting more challenging, not less challenging, just by the one measure of this report that came out and was shared during a side event at the CND. We are now in the green section here in terms of our phase of the coalition. We have shared best practices and models, looked at the international initiatives that we can collaborate on. We had a midterm check-in, and now we enter the phase of action planning and implementation. And so this is the first session of that, but what happens around this space is outside of the meeting time throughout the month of April, May, June, and July. And then we will be moving later on beyond that to looking at how do we ensure sustainability of our work. And we will have the final coalition working group meeting in September that will wrap up the first year of the coalition. And then we will focus heavily on the implementation of individual initiatives. I want to then say how this looks moving forward. So action planning and implementation. For these sessions over these 4 months, from April through July, we will be looking to share national experiences. If you are interested in presenting on any topic, presenting your national experience or an experience within a city or a province of your country, please follow the link in the chat. I'm going to ask Sarah Finmore to please paste this link into the chat, and you can express your interest in presenting. And we will connect you as best as we can on the agenda over the coming months and slot you in. If we have too many requests, we will ask instead respectfully for a video that we can post on the website, but we will try to accommodate as much as possible. Then we will also be looking to continue the discussions from previous sessions on global initiatives, and we will also be looking to engage other sectors. We're considering that for the public health working group, we can invite civil society. For this working group, we could invite private sector to also share what they're doing around this space as well. So we'll continue to connect with co-chairs to explore the best way and the best time to incorporate and ideas for that engagement. And additionally, if we do have time, again, in our schedule over the coming months, we have the option of also providing workshops or training opportunities for coalition participants. We have, for example, the UNODC training for policymakers, which is quite popular, that UNODC offers. We'll see to the best extent. If we cannot, there are other opportunities where we will also provide those trainings in other events that we're doing. Now I want to move on to what the next few months look like. We have at the moment recommendations, 60 of them, which we are considering during this April session. And the goal here is to conclude these and to post them on the website in the coming weeks. And from there, move on to the next step, which are actions. So I will in a minute review those recommendations and ask for final inputs before moving on. But I want to share that the next stage will be the actions. The actions, you might look at them as measures that can be adopted, will be opportunities for you all to demonstrate and to share what activities, what actions, what initiatives you are all taking in support of these 60 recommendations. And I'll share that for this sub-working group, it's not 60, it's much smaller. I forget, I think it's 7 or 8 recommendations. Each sub-working group has a different number of recommendations. So you might ask, okay, so we're going from recommendations to actions. What is an action? How do we quantify? What are examples? I want to share with you a few different options that we might look at as actions. So an action could be expressing interest in one of the international organization initiatives. These are the global initiatives that we've been looking at over the past months. You might ask, well, where do I find that? How do I get to these? I will provide the instructions in a minute and show you, but the instructions are also available on the website under initiatives. Currently, there are 115 initiatives on the website, not over, exactly 115. We are expecting a few more perhaps to come in, but that's about the number that we have. And that's one way that you can contribute to the actions, is to express an interest in one or more of these global initiatives where many countries come together. A second option could be a bilateral or international organization contribution that your country might be able to make, either financially or in-kind assistance. You might have technical expertise and might be able to work with another country that needs some support in this area of work to advance synthetic drugs. So we would really value you all in being able to share that. Another might be to adopt a new practice or a policy or a regulation or a law. So your countries, you would identify and then pursue and advance these and in support of the recommendations. Fourth, you might consider engagement and collaboration with the private sector. And fifth, you might host a regional or global meeting of the global coalition that in a thematic area of interest. And so that might be another way that you could all contribute as well. Now, where do these actions go? What's the next step? So in identifying these actions that your countries are able to take, we will begin working on these global initiatives, international initiatives, through these international organizations, those that are posted on the website, between the period of April to August. This is the initiation phase. And again, I realize that in some cases, we've been working on these initiatives for many years. Think of PICS, PENS, IONICS. So in some cases, we are expanding and bringing more partners on board. In other cases, we are continuing, we are initiating a brand new initiative that hadn't been done before. Beyond the international initiative, what we're looking at compiling in the month of July are the achievements. What has been achieved since the coalition started to date? And we will be receiving sort of feedback from all of you in terms of what actions you have taken. That will be compiled in a report that we'll put together in July 2023, so that we can then present that at the UN General Assembly. We're expecting in September of this year. And from then on, we enter the second year of the coalition, in which case we are then moving with the international organizations carrying forward the initiatives on their own, sort of in the spotlight, and the coalition becomes sort of a supportive structure. But really, it's the international organizations that carry forward all of the work, and we then look for the outcomes. What are the concrete results measured in each of the international organizations' work? And we will be looking at measuring that in a year 2 report, not the year 1 report, which are just the achievements of what we achieved to date, but that will be the outcome measures moving forward. Now, I want to highlight, you might ask, well, where do I find these initiatives to see what the international organizations can offer? I want to refer you to our website, globalcoalition.us. You will see there in the very center, the initiatives tab. Please click on that, and you will then get a listing by sub-working group, or you can go into each of the initiatives that you can see in the drop-down menu a little further down on the website. And you can read through those and click on the ones that are of interest. Here's an example of one which deals with PICS. We all know the Precursor Incident Communication System from INCB. So in this case, you will have a description, the background, the accomplishments, very importantly, the project activities. How do I benefit? What would I do within this project if I participate through my work? And you'll have a description there with some of the outcomes that we would expect to receive in participating on this. And at the very end, you will see which countries are currently participating. Now, if your country is there and your country is participating, but you're not, and you can participate in your capacity, please feel free. You can email. You see the email addresses there, incb.precursors@un.org, and you can express interest in saying, I would like to join, this initiative as part of the Global Coalition's work. And then you will be added to the list that these officials are working with at the international organizations to then involve you in their initiatives. I must say that in some cases there isn't a cost involved. In other cases, it might be very cost intensive. And in that case, there may not be resources immediately available. What INL and our team will be doing will be coordinating with other donor countries and other bodies and multilateral bodies to see if we can generate more resources if the demand is beyond the means of what we currently have with the coalition's work. Now, I want to share with you a new website feature as well that we have. We would like to invite you to engage on a coalition discussion board, which has already launched. Registration emails have been sent to all coalition members through the email address provided during the original registration process. If you have not received the email or misplaced it, please email us at syntheticdrugs@state.gov, and we will send you a new registration link so that you can register a password. And how do you get to that account? I want to walk you through once again. At the upper right-hand part of the website, you can now see there is a login button you can click. And when you go there, you will be inputting a username or email address and a password that you will set. Once you do that, you will see at the upper right-hand bar that you have 3 buttons, an alarm bell that will tell you if there are new posts. You will see a profile section where you can add a photo and a banner. And you will also see this section of a community symbol that has 3 individuals there. When you click that community symbol, that will take you to your home screen where you can add a banner. I added Washington, D.C., and you can add your photograph and make sure all of your information is correct. And you will see tiles. You can register for as many of these sub-working groups as you like. You can add more or remove. And so you can select the tile that may be of interest to you to open that up. In this case, I'm going to open up 2.2 on information sharing. And when I open that up, you will see like a social media account that you are able then to post information. So where you see say something to the group, you can click there, you can add images, you can type messages, you can share reports, information, statistics, news articles, information about your country, information about international things that you are seeing, and you can comment on others. Here's something that I posted. As I mentioned, Sierra Leone's president declared a public health emergency. I posted this about a week ago. I posted a BBC article. And then once I did that, we had a colleague that further shared with us that, yes, President Bayo of Sierra Leone declared a national emergency on this drug called Kush, and that he looks forward to collaborating and partnering with us. And we're looking forward to doing that as well with Sierra Leone. So you could see how this could be helpful, productive, and connect us with our colleagues. And you can comment, you can ask questions, we can have a discussion and dialogue. So please use this feature. And now I will move on to the next section, which are the recommendations. So as the first item in today's agenda, we will finalize the recommendations and post them on our website. To the recommendations document that you have all received by email with the link for today's meeting, we have added or are adding the following chapeau, we say, the following preambular text. The recommendations herein are non-binding and for future government consideration where appropriate. They reflect the views of technical experts participating in the global coalition and do not reflect a consensus of governments or a single national position. We are all very accustomed to participating in multilateral forums and negotiating resolutions and other documents. This is not a document that we're looking for a national consensus of member states in the form that you might expect at a CND or a World Health Organization meeting. In fact, here what we're looking at is just all of us as national experts sharing, technical experts sharing our views on what we feel should be added or additive as recommendations. But certainly this is not an exhaustive list. Your countries are not required to adopt any or all, but we're hoping that your countries would consider adopting as many of these as possible, and that you reflect back to us actions that have been taken from your side in terms of supporting some of these recommendations. So I know I've taken a lot of time. I apologize. I want to now quickly go through this list and just share with you all the changes that we have received since the meeting in March of last month. The first recommendation: engage the chemical and other relevant industries in promoting cooperation on a voluntary basis to address the diversion of chemicals, precursor chemicals, and related manufacturing equipment, including through adoption of regulations or industry-led voluntary standards that can be expanded within domestic industries and to additional countries. Participate in international platforms for government-business cooperation, such as the INCB Public-Private Partnership Project, and encourage industry to do so. Second is a brand new one. Explore the establishment of a Chemical Action Task Force, CATF, to examine, develop, and implement new approaches and measures to address the diversion of chemicals and essential equipment used to manufacture illicit drugs. Third, improve the capacity and equipment of laboratory and law enforcement personnel, raise awareness, including by sharing and updating international alert lists for law enforcement and the judiciary to enhance the identification and detection of synthetic drugs, including their precursors, and in particular, designer precursors. Fourth, improve investigation and dismantling of clandestine laboratories through the development of the appropriate normative framework, efforts to build capacity, increasing officials' access to naloxone, and technical assistance for law enforcement, forensic laboratories, prosecutors, and judges. Fifth, increase disposal or repurposing of precursor chemicals and synthetic drugs by adopting national disposal plans and building capacity of national authorities. Six, pursue scheduling to address designer drug precursors and review and scheduling of substances on a class family basis, in particular for those substances which are purposefully made to circumvent the list of controlled substances and have no known legal use. And seventh, to enhance investigations into suspicious and stopped shipments, diversion attempts, and trafficking incidents involving precursors, other chemicals, and equipment, by increasing submission, use, and the exchange of actionable information and operational cooperation through existing platforms such as PICS and PENS. So that is all I have for the recommendations 1 through 7 for this sub-working group. I will now ask if there are any final edits or comments before we publish these with the edits that I shared on the website. If you could please just raise your hand and let us know. Okay, I see Bruce Berry, please.
G'day, mate. From New Zealand, well done. That reads really well, and I'm pretty pleased with the way that's come together. So great work from my perspective.
Thank you so much, Bruce. Thank you for your comment.
And Brian, I can't actually find my hand up raise button. Some weirdly it's in settings, I think. But hey, I'm just wondering, in the very first initiative, I think the other one is it's chemical industry, but it's also chemical industry associations. Because if you go on the websites and look at the associations that sit across a lot of these industry, there's actually, they're quite influential, and they're actually operating almost as proper, well, I'll say it in a nice way, but business propaganda in the way they sell what chemical industry does. So you see that first one, engage the chemical and other relevant industry. I just wonder if that does incorporate the associations.
Well, wonderful. So thank you so much, Greg, for the input. So we would say, help me out with the language, engage the chemical, comma, associations, did you say, and other relevant industries?
Yeah, you could go engage relevant chemical industries.
Thank you. Engage and relevant chemical
industries.
Mm-hmm.
And chemical, I think they called chemical industry associations. You know, I think every country has them. There's a
yes.
Yeah, because they're quite subtly different.
Yes, and chemical industry associations. In fact, that's absolutely right. Yeah. With INCB, we are working and engaging associations also as part of the mapping exercise and the meeting that they will have. So yes, that's correct. Okay, thank you very much for that feedback. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I have a hard time seeing hands, so I apologize. Please jump in if you have any other comments or edits to make.
Доброе утро. Меня слышно?
Yes.
Алло. Доброе утро. Я в первую очередь хотел поприветствовать всех. Мне не получилось это сделать, потому что немножко со звуком разбирался. Всех привет, спасибо, Брайан, за вашу демонстрацию, за инициативы, которые вы выдвигаете. Очень интересно. Хотел бы просто отметить, что в Республике Казахстан, получается, из 7 инициатив, которые сегодня вы предлагаете, практически 5 из них уже реализуются именно в рамках, так скажем, нашего большого государственного комплекса по борьбе с наркотиками. Именно что касается вторичного использования прекурсоров. То есть те прекурсоры, которые мы изымаем, сейчас мы разрабатываем законопроект, чтобы его не утилизировать, а передавать в промышленные объекты для вторичного использования. Также одна из инициатив – это улучшение, так скажем, потенциала материально-технической базы экспертиз, которые делают нам по линии синтетических наркотиков. Это одно из стратегических направлений, которое мы сейчас берем международный опыт для того, чтобы ускорить саму экспертизу для принятия процессуального решения. Вот хотел бы отметить, что инициативы, которые вы озвучили, очень-очень, так скажем, актуальные, именно с ногу со временем. Спасибо.
resume the recording.
Thank you so much, Brian, and a very good morning to all of you, and respected co-chair, Mr. Dulat. A very good morning to you as well. So I'm so happy that these comprehensive recommendations which Brian has come up with, I mean, we all have worked a lot towards it, and we have finally finalized these recommendations. I'm happy about it, and I really congratulate each of you for putting in all that effort which has gone through all these previous meetings. Uh, I also understand that the legislations and regulations of each participant would vary from each other, from each country would vary. And we need to examine these recommendations about their viability as per the law of the land and also the international conventions on the drugs. So these recommendations would go a long way in our aim towards uh, towards the synthetic drugs trafficking. So, with that note, I would now like to invite Antonio Mazzatelli, Chief Precursor Control Section, INCB, for a presentation on the Chemical Task Force. Thank you.
I'll ask if we could start the recording. It's a recorded message since it's very early in the morning in Vienna.
Thank you. Were you able to access the recording? If not, we can turn it over to our second presenter and I can pull it up elsewhere. Let me know. Maybe Rainer, if you're able to present, would you mind starting and then we'll come up with, or we'll bring Antonio's recording afterwards?
Yes, I can. Just let
Perfect.
me start my video and try to share
Thank you. I'll go
my
up here.
screen. And right. Can you see my screen now?
Not yet.
Okay, it's here, but display. Now? Can you see it now, Brett? Because it's on full screen on my screen.
No, we don't have it yet. But I think you did send it to
Sarah,
me. No?
maybe, yes, I sent it to you, and if you want, then maybe you should put sharing here, but then it goes back to the other one.
Yes, I see it now.
Maybe if you could just make it in full screen mode, the bottom right.
That's the wrong, my screen now messed up. Yeah. Full screen mode. Is it there? No.
It's still not in full screen mode, but if you'd like, I could also display it myself.
Yeah, please. Yeah, let's do that then. So we don't waste more time.
Sure.
Sorry.
One moment.
Brian, I actually have it ready. Do you want me to share it?
Go ahead.
All right. Here we go. Screen share. And there we go. Can you see it all right?
Yes. I think can just go to the next one. That's the opening. It's basically on this precursor strategy that we developed for this region, and where I mentioned and some of the activities that we have been developing. But just to set the scene, as you already mentioned before, how the synthetic drug problem is growing in this region. And then we have a short presentation here where you can see the drug supply in Southeast Asia on the left side, where we have the red bars and the blue one is seizures of methamphetamine and ketamine in Southeast Asia, how they grew from 2017 up to 2022. And then for meth, as an example, we have 50 tons in 2017, and then it went up to 138 tons in 2022. Ketamine from 1 ton up to 23 tons. And on the right side, where we have the opium production in Myanmar, between the same period from 17 to 23, we basically grew from 550 tons up to 1,080 tons. It's just to show that the whole synthetic drug issue continues to grow and grow and grow, and we can't see it reducing shortly. The opium production, even because of the total ban of drugs now in Afghanistan, so we do expect some more growth in this region. But the big question that always comes up is whether let's say the heroin users will really swap that easily to another synthetic drug or not. That will be seen in the next coming years, how we can develop that. Next one, please. This whole growth in the synthetic drug production, synthetic drug production, is also to be joined by the growth in chemicals. What we see is under the conventions, we have table 1, table 2 substances. We basically focus on table 1, which are much more restrictive. And this now with the last CND decisions, our 2 tables increased to 51 substances now from 33 that we had with the 18 new substances that coming in, the 16 proposed by NCB plus the 2 by the US government. And here you can see it like between 18 and 23, how the non-controlled chemicals, that's the biggest challenge for us now, grew in seizures reported by member states in this region. The main ingredients that were normally used for ephedrine, for methamphetamine that we needed in this region is ephedrine, pseudoephedrine, P2P. They're still being reported as being the main ones and the majority of the seizures of methamphetamine in the region. But we have not record of any seizures, significant seizures of those substances in the region. That means the non-controls are popping up more and more, and governments are challenged to see how they will deal with that. And that's one of the ideas that we are trying to develop in this region so far. Next one, please. These are 2 quick examples of 2 seizures, one in Myanmar, in Yangon in February last year, where they seized almost 13 tons of propionyl chloride, which is a substance listed in the International Special Surveillance List. It was one of the tools provided by INCB for basically customs authority and government authorities in general to share with private sector if they want, where these are the substances that are seen and have been reported in a listed drug manufacturer globally. And the next one is also in February last year, location Mae Sot here in Thailand, with 25 tons of benzyl cyanide. And this is also part of the substance on the ISSL. Next one. So there's a standard strategy that we published earlier this year, and it's basically a response to this challenge that we see in the region, and is grounded on the international conventions and the challenge that we see for governments and what we can do as an international organization to support law enforcement operations and provide technical assistance to the countries overall in the region. And we use the same strategy and the work that we do in very close cooperation with INCB that basically has the mandate under the 88 convention. Next one, please. Here we have one of the 4 pillars, which is a policy development, where we basically are trying to do awareness raising, gathering political will, establishing regulatory measures in countries that are missing them, prioritizing non-controlled chemicals and how to deal with when you are facing that as the main challenge, and trying to build new partnerships. Here also refer to IPACOD, which is, there's a typo, but that's very much in line of one of the recommendation that we had in the whole group now, which is the ASEAN Interparliamentary Assembly, and it's the Special Council on Dangerous Drugs, where they decide to take action. And they had, if I'm not mistaken, their last meeting in 22 in Cambodia, where basically they try to transform the resolutions on the ASEAN and IPA into action in the region. So it's a priority that there is a existing group of parliamentarians in the region that worries and looks into the drug issues. And next one, pillar number 2 basically goes into institutional capacity building, where we try to establish coordination mechanism, where we have in some countries more than 1, 2, or up to 8 different agencies dealing with effectively controlling chemicals. And they need to improve their coordination efforts. We did that in Thailand. We are going to do it this year in Laos. And that's always challenging because, as an example, in Laos, they just added a new ministry of being in charge of monitoring and controlling the imports and exports of precursors. And that's where we try to integrate them and make them aware of all the issues related to international and national control of chemicals. Try to enhance the frontline capacities also, where we train the frontline officers and how to detect, identify, and analyze suspicious shipments of chemicals. Some of those chemicals are traded basically in huge containers, and that's easier. We go through ports, easier. We think on the size of it, but then at the end, we know that less than 2% of the containers shipped globally are checked. That means there's a lot of room for improvement and a lot of work to do, and that's where we like to help them and work in close cooperation with other programs to do that. How to monitor the trade in non-controlled chemicals, because that's again facing a regulatory framework that it doesn't exist for non-controlled ones. How countries can look at it if there's no legislation to do it, but there's always an additional step that can be done by the competent authorities in the countries to look at those shipments. New tools were put available as the PEN Online Lite by NCB, where those substances can be reported between governments trading them. But you need to have some legislation in your country that will also inform the proper authorities that the non-controlled substance is being exported. Otherwise, they cannot use the system to report it. As an example, can give you caffeine, which is per se not a precursor, but it's an end product that is used in the manufacture of methamphetamine, which is legally traded globally, and Vietnam is a big producer of it and exports, but it's not controlled in Vietnam, but it's controlled in other countries like in Myanmar and in Laos as an example. And then they are trying to find a mechanism how they could be informed about any shipments directed to their territory. And Vietnam has to find a way how they can get that information from the exporters so they can inform the importing authorities shipment is coming. So if it's not authorized by them, they can stop it. We also support them in tracking chemicals when they are seized at some point, wherever in a port or on border crossings, and try to do backtracking investigations to find the point of diversion of those chemicals. Next one, please. The third pillar is about operational support. Then is an information exchange at national level, where we try to facilitate this exchange of information on chemical diversion and trafficking case between the competent authorities. There are always limitations. Law enforcement doesn't like to share those information with regulatory agencies, but it has to have that mechanism in place. Otherwise, it will be very hard to find solutions for them. Facilitating the communication at an international level, then you have the tools available that we already saw in the recommendations. And encourage some operations where we provide basically support to it, but it has to be agreed by the governments how to do it. And we can select the number of chemicals, provide the identification, the CAS numbers or the HS codes if they have them, and try to decide with the different governments to oversee any trade for a certain amount of time, where we can identify then diversions. And the last pillar is number 4. This next one is on research and data. All of this, we need evidence that's what's going on. That means we do spend a lot of time also in researching information and trying to do analysis of different trends, and we provide them to different governments and all the international community on what changes are we seeing in the trade of chemicals, and what chemicals have been identified in drug manufacture. Try to monitor online sales, which is the big challenge at some of those products. They are announced widely in different countries on different means on the internet. If it's in the open source, it's fine. It's easy to see them. But if you go to darknets, and that becomes then a bit more complicated. But we do have in UNODC experts looking into this issue too. A special focus we will also give on forensic laboratories. We're trying to support national laboratories to achieve a certain standard where they can identify not only the drugs, but what kind of chemicals were used to manufacture those drugs. That will provide more information to decision makers and how to advance their legislation and policy. Next slide is a few short examples of some of the activities. One, the top left one is the clandestine laboratory assessment that we did in Cambodia, where we identified more than 26 locations between warehouses and illicit clan labs, basically for ketamine. So we helped the country identify, look at what chemicals are there, and then now trying to support them and in identifying the best means in disposing of those chemicals, whether it's repurposing for the private sector or whether you have to really destroy them. Some of the coordination meetings that we do on the national with the national authorities between them regularly to discuss any challenges that they are facing, any needs they have, and then we try to incorporate them in our activities. On the right side, you have the last report that we published on what we call the chemical situation, the mapping of the chemical situation in the region, where we have a regional chapter and then a national chapter for each of the countries, where we inform on legislation existing and the existing authorities and the situation in the country. Last one, please, is about short conclusions. Is the increased use of non-controlled chemicals, and which is basically fueling this expansion of drug supply in the whole region, and it expands also beyond the region. We need to really improve the international cooperation, and that's where we face some challenges because many authorities don't want to do the extra step and go above what the obligation is in front of the international conventions. Our regional office has been serving as an honest broker for countries dealing with chemicals. So at some point, if they don't have a contact in another country, they try to come through us, and we establish the contact between them so they can do joint investigation and pursue whatever needs they have without our interference. And we will continue assisting the countries in the region in cooperation with other international partners as well, whenever we see that there is more expertise and different issues that they should look at. I thank you for the time. I hope I kept it in time. And if any questions, please, I'm available too.
Уважаемые участники, у кого есть вопрос, задавайте, пожалуйста. Очень интересная тема.
Mr. Dulat, thank you so much for facilitating the conversation. I'm so sorry, but we have one more presentation to show, and if you don't mind, would you mind if I played it?
Да, конечно, давайте.
Thank you. I see the sound is not working.
Sarah, make sure that you share audio.
Thank you. I apologize. It looks like I might be having issues sharing. We might need to post it on the website. I am so sorry.
Yeah, I mean, if I could step in, since we just have about 10 minutes left, that video that we can post on the website, we could also share at the next meeting, related to the idea of a chemical action task force, which is something that many of us have been very interested in exploring. And so what the colleague from INCB, Antonio Mazzatelli, was going to share was a bit of the history and sort of the kind of the steps that would be necessary to implement that recommendation number 2 that we're proposing to add. But Greg, as I see you are here and have also provided so many great thoughts and really the driver of this idea, I was wondering if you could share some thoughts from your side in terms of the rationale, why we would need this, and sort of what this would look like.
Yeah, sure, Brian, I can do that in 10 minutes. So bear with me, because I'll try not to talk too fast for everybody. But really, where this comes from is in 1989, G7 came together to look at the whole subversion of the financial sector due to money laundering, the massive impact. And it was out of that FATF was actually created, the Financial Action Task Force. And I suppose in the context of what we're dealing with now, as you hear, we're actually dealing with the massive subversion of the chemical industry across the world that almost identically reflects what was happening in the financial sector. So you're dealing with a legitimate industry that in essence is being subverted through greed, through the lack of understanding and knowledge, I think, in some ways. And what you're seeing off the back end here is massive harm across the world. And I suspect that the harm being created across the world is far outweighs what the harm of money laundering did in the 1980s. So the concept of a CADF regime, in essence, takes away that element of voluntary. The idea is that you move away from the sort of voluntary type concept of a chemical company or whatever, doing some stuff or not doing stuff, to creating regime across the world. We already have the mechanisms in place, which is the exciting bit. The 1961 and 1988 conventions. 61 created the International Narcotics Control Board. 88 actually creates all the articles that you need to actually run and bear controls in countries already. There are 194 countries signed up to the 1988 convention that sits there. So the actual vehicle to run the concept of a CADF exists. That's easier to say, but the reality is if we look at the FATF regime, it was, and I think INCB potentially could be or is already in place to be the version of CADF for this. If you look at their website, what they do, they're pretty much across this as the International Narcotics Control Board. But what it does is, in essence, if we think about it, it's really creating a regime of controls, and this is how FATF actually works, where it's basically to countries to create legislative around the controls for the regime. Even under the FATF regime, it's voluntary. However, there's serious risk to countries if they do not engage in this process. There's a whole lot of sanctions and other bits and things that happen. In this sense, it's about the countries creating legislative for specific chemical companies, manufacturers of equipment, and companies that move chemicals to comply to regime. And if we looked about that simply, it means that the chemical companies must set up this regime within that chemical company to do due diligence, so know their customer, to do suspicious transaction reporting, and also to comply by whatever rules are about the manufacture of specific drugs or chemicals and online sales and that sort of stuff. So it requires them to do this. There is the creation of regulators. So in the FATF regime, you have a regulator. A country would establish a regulating agency. A regulator sits across the chemical industry and deals with individual companies to make sure that they're compliant and operating and functioning under that. That works really well in the FATF regime in that sense and the like. So the idea is really to put these raft of regimes in and deal with. A regulator can also prosecute a chemical company if it, in this sense, if it fails to comply to the requirements of the regimes, or it's called offending or whatever in that sense, because that's how how you do. They're working with law enforcement and other agencies in an international level. So the other key bit to it is training the chemical industry, right? So here in New Zealand under FATF, we have quite a lot of training across all our reporting entities about what we're trying to achieve. And this is about developing partnerships and getting an understanding. If you look on the Chemical Association websites, there is no mention of any of those websites from chemical associations about stopping precursor chemicals into organised crime. Yet we all see the massive harm and the tonnage of chemicals that are flooding into them. So it helps sheet home all of that piece, and it puts a spotlight on it. Now, the other big thing on the back of this, which is really strong on FATF and which could happen in CATF, is what's called country evaluations. And it's the big stick, really, in essence, for FATF. So what they do is they come in and evaluate a country. Have you put the legislation in? Are you controlling the chemical industry? Have you got the right, is there right compliance? Is there prosecutions occurring? Is there learnings? And part of that is actually also stepping in to help a country out if it's struggling around the compliance pieces and that sort of stuff. So it's not all stick. There is a bit of carrot that applies to that. In the FATF regime, if you do not comply, you end up on what's called the grey list or the black list. If you get into those lists in the FATF regime, you can see as much as 7% of a GDP being actually impacted. A little bit different in the chemical industry part because we're dealing with one industry. But I think the critical thing would be potentially sanctions in the way in which chemical industry could operate across the world and who they can trade with and a whole raft of things. Sanctions are a real strength around what it looks like. Is it doable? 100% it is. And I said the structures are there, and Antonio is already sort of pretty keen about this. The INCB is about this. However, it's a big deal. There is costs. It will incur costs within countries. You would also want to set up something that looks like an FIU, which is a financial intelligence unit, but you need a chemical one because all the suspicious reporting has to go to someone. You have to assess it. You have to take steps. You have to take actions. And that material goes to regulators and it goes to law enforcement and others to take steps to do stuff. It can also help communicate through to your committees that decide on what drugs you're going to put on your legislative sort of changes and that sort of stuff. So there is cost, but to give an idea in New Zealand recently off the back of some perverse reporting about how we were operating internationally, our cabinet decided to add accountants, lawyers, real estate agents and high value dealers to the AMLT regime. It was a big deal. And when that added about 4,000 regulators, regulatory agencies, they did it. So it can be done. In that sense. And I think, as I said to Brian, the critical thing now is we need to collect now across the world what the actual harm of synthetics is across the world. And you need a dollar figure to this, right? And so we're trying to reach out across the UNDC and others, and INCB also does reporting. But I would say straight up, it's in the trillions of dollars. And as you can see there, we're at a level now where we've got states actually being hammered by gangs, and a real breakdown in social fabric. So that's kind of the concept behind CATF. If you look at everything we're dealing with here and the mass production that you're seeing ramping up, it's all because of the endless supply of chemicals coming. So we have to do something to cut that off to do that. I can tell you, only from today, I was told that in the United States now, they're just about handing kilos of meth out for free, or it's at $600 a kilo. That is really sheeted home to the massive amount of chemicals available to produce. So that was in 8 minutes, Brian. That's what we're trying to achieve here. what we're trying to do is think big and what this initiative is and try to change the world for better.
Thank you so much, Gary. That was very, very comprehensive. I'd like to turn it back to our co-chairs, Monica and Dulat, for any final comments as we wrap up today's session. Thank you.
Thank
Да,
you,
Брайан,
Greg, for
все, давайте. Все, пожалуйста, выступайте, я после вас.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you for the wonderful presentation and also inputs from Greg. Actually, it has been brought out it was really the need of the hour is that we pay a lot of attention on the non-controlled substances also. The countries do take notice of the non-controlled substances which are going into the production or manufacture. Thank you for all those inputs. And monitoring, information sharing, and early warning are some of the essential keys to contain this illicit manufacturing of synthetic drugs. I'm very hopeful that there would be, with these recommendations and inputs, we would be moving with the action which needs to be taken, as Brian has pointed out, and it would be a very useful recommendation for each of the participating country. Thank you so much, and I look forward for forthcoming interactive sessions as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Mr. Dulat, any final comments?
Да, Брайан, спасибо. В первую очередь хотел бы отметить активность и убеждаемся в очередной раз о тех мерах, которые предпринимает каждое государство, страна по контролю за прекурсорами. Это очень отрадно слышать, убеждаться в том, что такие люди продвигают очень интересные проекты, очень интересные свои мысли. Хотелось бы отметить то, что буквально на той неделе в Казахстане мы проводили рабочую встречу по инициативе отдела АНЛ посольства США в Казахстане по созданию национального таргетинг-центра по контролю за прекурсорами. Изучали американский, литовский опыт, также отдел ACB, которые очень интересные вещи нам предоставили. Я представил свои коллеги, что также ждем очередного заседания коалиции по обсуждению данных вопросов. Всем спасибо. Было очень приятно всех слышать, видеть. Всем спасибо.
Thank you so much to our co-chairs and also to our presenters for today. I'm now going to ask Henke if you could please stop the recording and then give your instructions for the next.